How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? Southern Europe, beyond that fault line that runs roughly across the middle of Europe. I have been saying for quite some time now that the buying rush by the Brits in Southern Europe was mistaken. And they'd be buying into falling markets, but of course no one listens to me. The fact that I've been doing this for so long and have never yet been proved wrong seems to cut no ice. So be it. But now we have the first signs of what I've long suspected, the destruction of the tourist costas in Spain. I can't remember when I started saying that buying in Spain was a really bad idea, but I think it was in 2009. I started off by showing photographs of a town right on the Spanish-Portuguese border, just to the north of Ayamonte. I estimated that it was roughly the size of Welwyn Garden City and had a population of maybe a dozen people. Yeah, that's people in residence. A couple of years ago, I briefly lived there. It was certainly busier then than 10 years earlier, but it was far from full. I did reconnoitre the whole area back in 2009 and found tourist town after tourist town with masses of empty apartments and villas right the way from Isla Cristina round to Almeria. And I advised folks thinking of moving to Spain to think again. It seemed to me that it would take a decade or more to cope with clearing the backlog of homes for sale created by some serious overbuilding. Things were just starting to pull back when the government quite deliberately trashed the economy. In my opinion, it was a deliberate and malicious thing to do, and I find it hard to deny those who say that this is all part of a plan to wreck the world and then take over. I have to say I still think it's just an example of how stupid the average politician is. Sometimes I wonder if any of them ever went to school, and at the top of the tree, of course, we now have Batty Biden. All I can say about that is I'm glad I'm not a citizen of the USA because they've become the laughing stock of the planet. The activities of Biden are beyond belief, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. Oh well, maybe the doom-mongers are correct. It is clear to anyone that Batty Biden should be in a home for the terminally bewildered. But it is obviously to someone's advantage that the number one country on the planet has a top cat who is quite clearly in the later stages of Alzheimer's. As a president, he has some serious competition for idiocy, but he clearly tops the lot. Let me refer you to one of my cat cartoons on which I have fun with the subject. The URL will be put down below so you can connect to it. You might find it amusing. Well, I hope you find it amusing. Right, so what do you do? If you're living in Spain, it's now much too late to do a run-up. Same in Italy. You guys are now well and truly in the soup, and it can only get worse. The resolve of countries in the north of the continent is getting stronger by the week that they have no intention of writing blank cheques for those in the south. Even if the Scandinavians hang on in there and the Netherlands dithers for another decade, I don't think that will alter the fundamental fault line that runs across Europe. The second issue is that politics is clearly failing, and the voice of business is starting to get louder. I'm surprised it's taken so long for this to happen. My argument used to be that there will undoubtedly be a Brexit deal, because various business interests will twist a few political arms. That should have happened 2 years ago, but is only just beginning to happen now. The business angle will get stronger as the political and economic chaos spreads. The first signs are now emerging in Germany. How long it takes to get to a serious groundswell is a matter for guesswork, and of course I don't do guessing, But one does have to ask, how long is Germany going to backstop Southern Europe's economic collapse? Spain's economy rests on three legs: Catalonia, the Basque Country, and the southern costas. At the moment, Catalonia, the Basques and Galicia will quite happily put two fingers up to Madrid. The strength of the tourist areas depends upon the hospitality sector, plus, in large part, the Brits. Government decrees have put the hospitality business out of business. And now they're making sure the Brits get out as well. If this continues much longer, Spain will start to sink back into the Middle Ages. I used to call Spain my home, and I've lived there for a great many years. I also know my Spanish history, and I've always had a very poor view of their Catholic majesties, who threw out the Moors, then threw out the Jews, and instigated a top-down society that languished for half a millennium. When I first walked the length and breadth of Spain, and indeed spent half a year as the focal point in a small village in northern Spain, where the only other person who could read and write was the village priest, the country might have been stuck in the year 1450, for all they could show for the passing of the centuries. If you want to catch up on my story of those times, do read my book about those times. Once again, I'll put a link down below so that you can get that book from Amazon if that subject turns you on. I mention those times because throwing out the lifeblood of the nation by their Catholic majesties and instituting a religious and social lockdown and destroying the middle class was what wrecked Spain. That is happening again before our eyes as the government follows a route that leads straight to disaster. How long the lunacy lasts and what comes next is beyond my ability to guess, but you will note that I no longer live in the country which once became my spiritual home. Spain is in very real danger of returning to a series of states. Madrid has lost the plot and is in danger of losing parts of the country. And do remember that Spain is not the only country south of that fault line. Italy is, in many respects, two countries which straddle that fault line. Get on the wrong side, and you're going to face tough times ahead. Former Yugoslavia straddles that fault line, but I'm unsure where to put the countries that used to form that post-Second World War amalgamation. My gut feeling is that there is still an undercurrent of instability in that region, which is lovely in parts, but economically still a bit of a mess, and not the place a sensible person would sink a significant amount of money. Greece is squarely south, and squarely a wrecked economy. But I have for some time suggested that buying anything in the EU or Southern Europe is premature. I believe there is still a long way to fall. Sorry to be a bit depressing, but it's the way it is. Anyway, that's it for this week. Do sign on again next week and do press a little button down there to like the video, which helps me. Thank you for that, and see you next week.